Okay. So just to begin, it seems to some degree it started with the proposal of the MHA pension plan. Is that correct? That you had refused, I guess, to sign a letter of consensus on that. What exactly happened there?
Well, I think there was another proposal that was being brought forward to caucus, and you know, it was talking about defined benefit. It was going to change out the MHA pension plan. You know, as you know, you probably heard that a lot of people have misinformation about, you know, what MHAs are entitled to. So an MHA, if they only get one term, they're not entitled to a pension. They have to get elected in a second General Assembly, a general election, in order to qualify. And so there's a percentage based on your income and your years. So people refer to it as gold-plated pension plans. For someone who has, like myself, who worked in the public service for almost 27 years, the rules when I decided to go forward with this job was that there was portability between a public service pension and an MHA pension. So that was part of my decision-making process, just like any person who's taking a contract. You look at what's contained in the contract and the decision that you make. The rules were going to change, and so that was going to have a significant negative impact on me and my family, and a different decision I might have made. So what was being proposed was going to be negative to myself in terms of my own planning and the hard work that I do. So yeah, I disagreed with what was being proposed, and so I put that forward. I can't say that was met well by everyone, and so there was an effort. There were a number of meetings that happened over time, over a number of days, to have everybody move in the same direction. However, I stood strong on that. But I can't say that everybody accepted that kind of approach, and therefore I received some feedback on that, which I, didn't take well, actually.
But to what extent, I guess, did you feel this was bullying or intimidation? Or?
Well, the number of meetings that happened time and time again trying to change the decision is one aspect of that. But I also had been approached by a couple of individuals, who sat around the table and felt that my approach was probably not well received, and I could have taken a different approach.
You also make mention of Minister Andrew Parsons and a feeling of being shut out of his department. Can you explain?
Well, what I can say is that, as a Parliament Secretary, so I'll just back up in order to answer your question. When I was first elected, one of the things that happened, I was appointed as Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Tourism, Culture, Industry and Innovation. And I got to say, I had a very active role. You probably would have noticed that. I was at a lot of events. In July of 2017, there was a change after Minister Bennett came out of Cabinet. And so I was moved over to Municipal Affairs and Environment. I can't say that I've had the same level of involvement. Actually, I had very little involvement. And I hear from constituents all the time who ask me, you must know all these things that are happening within Municipal Affairs and Environment. Today is a great opportunity for me to come out and talk about the great things that we're doing as a government, but as a Parliament Secretary, I don't play a very active role, and that's part of what was contained in that reference in that letter to the Commissioner of Legislation.
She was running for Speaker, but right. Dale Kirby described it as kind of a confidence issue.
Yes, he did. You've seen the letter in my complaint to the Commissioner of Legislative Standards, and so there's a couple of things that a couple of statements I make in relation to that. One is about that there were a number of phone calls that were made to my house about, changing the decision of MHA Parsons in terms of not running as Speaker of the House of Assembly. And of course that was followed up by within less than an hour, and of course that documentation has been provided, less than an hour, where there was a BBM message sent to me saying that this was going to result in a non-confidence within this government, and hoping that that was going to deter me from voting the way that I did. Now, as I understand the vote for the Speaker of the House, it is an independent vote, it is a private vote. Now, I had already said to MHA Parsons that I would support her in her bid. She had approached me, no different than first after we formed government, when I was approached by the first Speaker. When Tom Osborne wanted to run for Speaker, he had called me. I was actually in an airport in Toronto, And you know, I listened to his background just like I listened to the other candidate at the time, and I voted accordingly. I looked at this situation the same way, that it was, as an MHA, it was my independent right to support Ms. Parsons, which is what I did. I was a bit surprised to receive those phone calls, and I was really taken back when I received that BBM to talk about my voting for Ms. Parsons was going to result in non-confidence. And I certainly didn't share that thinking.
But making a play to persuade you is one thing. What was it about those communications that you consider bullying and harassment?
Well, I think that when you've got repeated individuals within cabinet who are doing that, then, and you're a backbencher, and that's, you know, been the way these individuals have been conducting themselves, then it's, you know, it's a history now. You've got a history of that kind of behavior that's going on. And so as a backbencher, yeah, I viewed it as intimidation, harassment, and that's why I made the complaint.
You also took issue with the seating arrangement. Why is moving your seat considered bullying and harassment?
Well, I've raised that as well. So if you look at the configuration on the government side in the House, in the front row you have all cabinet ministers. In the second row you have a combination of cabinet ministers and parliament secretaries. Prior to the fall sitting of 2017, I was in the second row, just like all our parliament secretaries. After we came back into the House in the fall, one of the things that changed in the seating arrangement was that I was moved to the third row on the complete back bench. Now, that's not typical of what you see. Your parliament secretary, most sit with their ministers or adjacent to their ministers. I'm very much in the back, and I do perceive that that was a consequence of me publicly acknowledging that I would vote for MHA Parsons.
But when you're part of a party in a caucus, I know you may not agree with it, but aren't you accepting on some level that there's going to be caucus discipline, that this is sort of the way it works? If you don't like it, you're free to sit as an independent. So why is it wrong for a caucus to impose discipline like that?
I don't think it's wrong necessarily. I mean, it happens.
But you clearly do.
Well, okay, all right, fair enough. I've made my complaint. Now, a caucus is free to enforce discipline as they wish. That doesn't mean, as an MHA who works extremely hard on behalf of his constituents every day, doesn't mean that I should be penalized for doing what I thought to be an independent vote.
It sounds like you think that there are systemic problems in the Ball caucus and the Ball government. Am I accurate in assuming that?
What I would say to you is that you've had a number of individuals who have brought forward complaints. So I think the answer to your question is the fact that it's been more than myself who's brought forward a complaint of harassment and intimidation. And so I've described it as this is a pervasive issue. It's happening within not only our side on the House, but it's happening on all sides of the House, and it has happened for years. I'll also say that since I came forward, just like my colleagues, a number of people have reached out to me to say, thank you. This is great that you've brought this forward. This has gone on not only within government and within the legislature, but it's gone on within the public service. So I find that people who I did not know now know me and approach me and say, this is a great step. How can we improve how we conduct ourselves in the House, how we can improve how we act as public servants if we don't bring very, I guess, negative issues like harassment, intimidation. If we don't put that on the table, we cannot find a solution to move forward.
What do you say to people like this, maybe on the outside, who might look at this and say, well, this is kind of the way a party system works, and if you don't like that, maybe you shouldn't be involved with a political party?
Well, I'd say, Michael, that's probably what been my greatest learning, moving from the public service and going into political life. I got at this job because I really wanted to help people. I continue to do that. And yesterday we talked about in the House about democratic reform. Some of those things I think will come up for discussion for this all-party committee, that maybe we do need to change what's gone on in the past so that we provide the best possible service that we can to the people of this province.
There was a separate incident, there was issues about Sandy Collins interfering in your district, and you went to Eddie Joyce, and he ultimately ended up telling you to F off. What happened there?
There's no secret that since I became elected, the former MHA has been very active in my district. Some of the challenges that I've experienced, whether it's been on St. Brendan's Island or in Port Blanford, he's been involved in that as well. And so, when you're a new MHA and you're looking for advice, how do you do this job the best way you can? you know, you've got a background in community development, you've got a background in public engagement, but dealing with the political side, which you've never, there's no book, right? There's no document that you can pick up and say, this is how to be a great MHA, and here's the pitfalls. So you engage senior people like Mr. Joyce, who've been around a very long time, to give you that kind of advice. And so you expect that kind of advice. So yeah, when someone gives you a derogatory comment, when you're seeking that advice, you know, I kind of expect a bit more.
How does Paul Davis factor into all this? Do you have a complaint against his code of conduct?
As you're aware, on that day in the House, he stood up and he commented on that there was an active investigation of me by the town of Port Blandford. And of course, that was untrue. You know, I've talked to the Commissioner of Legislative Standards. He did receive a letter. However, he determined it wasn't of public interest. And so, you know, he looked at the Facebook post. He said, Mr. Chalk's comment to me has been that an MHA has the right to engage in debate with their constituents. And so what he perceived to be was an engagement of a debate, and he didn't think it was anything wrong. What Mr. Davis did that day in the House was that he said there was an active investigation, which was untrue, but then he went out into the media and he named me. And so I thought that was inappropriate and certainly a violation in my mind of the MHA Code of Conduct. But of course, that's up to the Commissioner of Legislative Standards. That's not for me to determine. My role is to make a complaint. It's his role to determine if a complaint is valid.
Do you think that this complaint will change the way business is done, the way people communicate with one another within the House of Assembly?
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that it's gotten attention across the province, across the country. I've heard from people down in the U.S. And so, yeah, I think people expect better from all of us. I'm committed to doing whatever I can to make the place better, and I would like to think my colleagues are aimed to do the same thing.
The Management Commission is bringing in the executive branch harassment policy as an interim measure until the Privileges and Elections Committee settles a new policy for the legislature, and they're looking at maybe bringing in the citizens representative. What do you think of all of that, or do you have any opinion on all that?
You know, I've met with the Commissioner. We've talked about the complaints that I have. He's talked about the process. He has indicated to me that he is going to bring in some outside experts to help with the process. And so I'd like to see how that unfolds. You know, so I reserve an opinion on that until I get more information.
Okay. Do you still feel comfortable in the Liberal caucus, the way things are?
You know, I'll tell you, I grew up a Liberal. My family were Liberals. I certainly decided to run as a Liberal. I believe in those philosophies, and so I'm going to continue to work on behalf of my constituents to the best that I can, and to solve their issues to the best that I can.
How would you plan to vote? June 15th, 16th, I think, is the Liberal AGM. If a leadership review question comes up, how would you vote on that?
Well, I think since that's a secret ballot, I think that's a little of an unfair question. But, you know, I have said, and I've told the Premier this, he and I have had many conversations, and I've told him that the fact that he's addressing this harassment and intimidation issue is encouraging to me, and so I'd like to see that kind of leadership, and I'm encouraged by that kind of leadership.
Great. Thank you very much.